Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Here we talk to expert entrepreneurs on their unique perspective on scaling a business in the new AI age. Today we have with us Stephen Gabrielson, the CEO and founder of Creative Advising. Hi, Stephen. Can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do at Creative Advising? Who is your ideal customer, and how are you different from other CPA firms?
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. Like you said, my name's Stephen Gabrielson. I've been a CPA for about 11 years now. And we started creative advising probably about, I believe, 7 years ago, is when we started creative advising. When I started the business, I had the opportunity to either buy in at the current firm I was working for, which was in more of an old school, I would say, style of CPA firm, where it was heavily focused on tax preparation. And I decided to leave there and actually start my own. And the reason I wanted to start my own business was so that I could actually help my clients throughout the year rather than just doing tax returns. I can't even tell you how many times I would sit down with the client and say, hey, look, if you just set up an S corporation or if you do X, Y, and Z throughout the next year, you can reduce your tax liability by 20, 30, $40,000. And then those
Mhm.
people would come back the next year and nothing changed, right? And so I knew there was a better way to do that and a better way to work with our clients to actually help them throughout the year and establishing good tax strategies and helping people actually understand how the tax code works and help them to actually reduce their tax liability throughout the year. And that's why I founded Creative Advising. We actually started the business solely focused on real estate agents. As we scaled and as we grew, that kind of got a little bit more broad.
Mhm.
And kind of shifted throughout the years, which I'm sure we'll get into that story as we go throughout this discussion here. Um, but yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of who we are. Our ideal client is any high net worth individual that's looking to reduce their overall tax liability. We are a little bit more niched than that, but
Mhm.
roughly anyone that makes over $1 million who is sick and tired of paying 40% of that to the IRS. That's really who we work with. We help them understand how to leverage the tax code to reduce their tax liability while still being able to grow their long-term net worths.
That makes full sense. I recently saw your Instagram page and your YouTube account. First of all, I think you're doing great with in terms of the content. It was really amazing. One
Thank
of
you.
the things that I really caught my eye was the way you explained like the four different types of CPA firms.
Yeah.
The boutique firms, the firms that have like a couple of CPAs,
Yep.
and the regional firms and the big four.
Yep. Yeah.
Which one do you categorize?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the four different types of CPA firms, you have small sole practitioner firms,
Mhm.
middle mid-tier firms or mid-level firms, and then the big four firms. And the fourth is what I would categorize myself at, which is what we call boutique firms, right? Those are the types of firms that have niched down in a very specific industry. We do one thing really, really well, and we are very client service focused. So we're very heavily focused on client experience, making sure that we are working with our clients and communicating really well with our clients and really helping them to, again, reduce their tax liability and understand what they're doing throughout the year and really building a good personal relationship with them as we go throughout doing that. So I would say we are in the um, boutique category when it comes to CPA firms.
Nice. So if you're saying you're very focused like on a custom
Uh-huh.
solution for each client, right? So
Yes,
that's
absolutely, yes. So every client that we work with, we do different strategies for. So we don't have cookie cutter tax strategies that a lot of the social media gurus out there do. If you go work with a lot of those types, they'll basically say, hey, this is the strategy that we say. You're going to pay me 30 grand and I'm going to give you this strategy and you're going to take it somewhere else to get prepared. We don't do that. We work with our clients throughout the year. We build custom strategies for every single individual client that we work with. And then we help hold their hand through the execution. We do the tax preparation on the back end. We do the bookkeeping and payroll management on the back end. And so we kind of bring it all in house and really help make sure that they're executing it properly as they go throughout the tax strategy.
that makes sense. That makes sense. So if it's more like a custom client-based business, so you might have to be, putting some of your resources into one single client, or how do you manage the resources in your company depending on like the number of man power
Yeah.
related resources versus the others?
Great question. So currently we have 9 people on staff right now. We're a fully virtual firm. So
Hmm.
I myself am located in Boise, Idaho, but then our staff's across the country. We even have some folks who are overseas working with us as well. And how we've set up the business is I myself am the tax strategist within the business. We have a president of creative advising. His name is Jonathan, and he runs the entire tax side of the firm. So any tax returns that go out the door, anything that's signed, all goes through him. So he handles those aspects. I don't do any tax preparation anymore. I jump in and help as needed if we're needing a little bit of additional capacity. And then we have a COO. Her name is Nicole, and she runs the entire operational side of the business. And by setting up that structure, we've really been able to separate out those different duties within the firm and make it to where we can first manage our capacity really, really well. If we're starting to get stressed out in one area, we know we either need to make a hire or add an additional tech stack into the mix in order to increase our capacity. And it's really allowed myself, Jonathan, and Nicole to sort of step out of the day-to-day operations, mostly me step out of the day-to-day operations and look into the business to see what we can do better and how we can optimize things to make it run smoother throughout the years. Rather than being so sucked into, I got to get these returns done, then you're not able to step out and actually work on the business. So those types of things have really helped us build and grow as well as scale this business throughout the years. Again, it hasn't always been like that. There was a steep learning curve there for sure to get to that point. But over the last few years, we've really been able to kind of figure out those types of things and use them to our benefit. And so mostly all I focus on is this tax strategy aspect. So I could take tax strategy calls with our clients throughout tax season. I take tax strategy calls on April 15th,
Okay.
which most CPAs are unreachable at that
Yeah,
date. But we've been able to manage our time really, really well from that perspective by separating out those duties.
that makes sense. That makes sense. So you mentioned that like you do just this tax strategy part. Like, what are the current industry trends that you've been seeing in that special side of the business
Yeah.
compared to the other ones that is more like the general one?
Yeah. So as far as like trends go, as far as like what types of strategies and that type of stuff.
No, as in like how are people, are other CPA firms doing this
Oh,
kind of niche
yeah.
strategy development, or like are they just working, and how are other people also scaling in that area?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So it's definitely becoming more popular. The client focus, the client touch is becoming much more important within CPA firms. It still worries me that not enough CPA firms are doing that. And I see that being a prevalent issue still because every single client I talk to, our main
Mhm.
selling point is you have full access to us. You can call us whenever you have questions. If you need anything, you can set up 15-minute calls. And like that aspect to clients is still very foreign. Even majority of the clients that I talk to, which I talk to probably 15, 20 leads a week, that aspect is the number one seller for majority of the people I talk to. So it still seems that majority of CPA firms out there are still stuck in the tax commodity arena where they're just churning and burning tax returns as fast as possible, communications on the back burner. They'll talk to the client when their tax return is done and they'll answer questions based on that tax return, and that's pretty much it. I do think the industry is shifting. I hope it is shifting because I think as CPAs, we really have shot ourselves in the foot by making the tax returns a commodity like we have. We need to be able to step back and
Yeah.
actually work with our clients throughout the year rather than just focusing on getting a tax return prepared. And as we've made those shifts within our firm to pull myself into the into the strategy section of the business and separate myself out from the preparation aspect of the business. We've seen client satisfaction go through the roof. And we've
Mm.
gotten a ton of good Google reviews from our clients. And overall, the business has run extremely much more smoothly over the last few years since we've made those shifts. So I think we still have a long way to go as far as the entire industry for CPAs is concerned. Um,
Mhm.
but I do see there being a good shift in that direction, especially as younger CPAs are starting to come up, which there's not a lot of us, unfortunately. But I do see it becoming more and more popular as the years go on, especially with social media. One of the hot topics and hot items on social media is these quick, easy tax schemes, which a lot of times land people in hot water. But it's also a great opportunity for younger CPAs to step in and be like, look, That's probably not a good idea. Taking a spendthrift trust and writing everything off in that spendthrift trust and never paying taxes again in your life is not a good idea. That's actually tax fraud and can land you in a lot of serious trouble. But here is a thing that we can do if we go restructure your corporate structure and we make sure you're taking all your proper expenses and you go take these deductions that you have and the income that you have and you buy a real estate property and then you run it as a short-term rental property and take those losses to use that to offset your income. That's actually a legal way that we can avoid taxes, right? So there's a ton of opportunity as CPAs to leverage that bad information people are getting on social media and turn it into good clients that are going to stay with you forever because you change the way that they look at the tax code, you change the way that they work with their accountants, and you really get long-term clients that are there to stay for a very long time, and they pay you better fees. They pay you much more than they've ever paid any other accountant, and they're happy to do it, which is crazy.
That makes full sense. But I'm curious on how do you personally like alone manage the whole strategy
Yeah.
side and how do you keep yourself educated?
Yeah, great question. So I'm always doing research, right? I'm always looking at things. Clients will reach out all the time with, "Hey, I saw this on social media. Can we do this?" Or "I saw this." Or I read a lot of books around tax strategy. I was really lucky early in my career to be trained by a CPA who actually traveled the country with the AI CPA, and he taught other CPAs about corporations and partnerships. So I got
Okay.
trained very heavily in that aspect of the tax law. So I was very lucky from that perspective. And then not only that, but I joined a networking group early in my career called Wealthability, which is Tom Wheelwright's group. I don't know if you know him, but he's Robert Kiyosaki's CPA, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so I learned a ton about tax strategy from him. So being able to take my coaching with Tom Wheelwright from the strategy perspective and then match it with my training from corporate and partnership training, I was really able to pull those two together. And I felt like I was very well versed, much more than a lot of other CPAs out there from a strategy perspective. And so I'm still learning and still growing in that arena every single day. Tax code changes pretty regularly now, unfortunately. So we're always kind of learning and growing there. But as far as like managing the strategies going forward, Jonathan, who's my business partner as well as the president of creative advising, he actually had the same CPA trainer that I did
Okay.
for corporations and partnerships. So he has the same upbringing as I do in the industry, which has been very beneficial. And then he's also been along my side learning these strategies as we've gone. So our level of strategy with tax code knowledge is quite similar. He is much better and much more detail oriented than I am. And so we make a great partnership because he can actually take these strategies and implement them extremely well on a tax return. And so that's how we've been able to kind of separate those two while still being able to marry it when it comes to the actual tax preparation aspect. Jonathan steps in, he knows every single client that we work with. We execute the Augusta loophole. We do the home office reimbursements. A lot of time we're paying kids. A lot of times we have a partnership that's a holding company that owns all these different entities. A lot of times we have S corporation, C corporation structures that are working together to optimize tax benefits. And so he has a very good understanding of all those strategies. And there's a lot of times where I'll sit down and chat with him about specific clients and issues that we're having. And a lot of times I'll pull him in on a lot of those strategy calls so that he can learn what we're doing for specific clients. So we've done a really good job of marrying those two while still keeping them separate and being able to keep capacity high in the firm.
That makes sense. So one thing that I'm feeling from what you said is you and Jonathan, both of you have the intuition that comes over a long
Yeah.
time of experience and
Yep.
a long time of playing around with different strategies. So how do you plan to scale the strategy part?
Yeah. So we have started pulling Jonathan more into the strategy aspect. We're
Mhm.
in the process of hiring a tax manager that's going to take over a lot of the internal tax review trainings, those types of things that Jonathan was doing, and move him more into the strategy component. But the hardest part about this business is finding good people, and not only finding good tax preparers, but finding, like you said, people that have that intuition to be able to look at the strategies and find the missing pieces instead of
Yeah.
just taking forms and data entry onto a tax form and making sure it's correct, right? So
Mhm.
that is always the hardest aspect of building and growing a firm. Obviously, you need resources on both sides. You need people with that intuition, and you also need people that don't necessarily have that intuition, but can grow into it, right? And
Yeah.
so that's ever changing still, even at our firm. Um, Trying to find the best way to do that is difficult, right? Do you start at college internships? Do you go with someone who has 3 to 4 years of experience that might be harder to uproot that knowledge and kind of rebuild it? So we kind of are going through a series of tests, I guess you can say, as we're growing. We're still small enough where we can make those fine tweaks and movements to grow in what we feel is the best way possible. So I would say it's to be determined on a lot of that for a majority of that. So yeah, it's hard to tell.
No, that's a great answer. So on that same note, like, do you think from the clients that you have handled personally in terms of strategy, have you seen common things happening over, because I think you mentioned your niche was real estate initially.
Yeah.
So, and then you probably expanded more,
Yeah.
but did you see any common strategies or common things? I'm asking from a perspective of building like a course or like a
Yeah.
training material for someone. Would that help with scaling the
Yeah.
strategy side?
Yeah, great question. So we are actually in the process of building out a course, which I'm really excited about. The tricky part about tax strategy, I don't want to say maybe it's not the tricky part, but the big misconception, especially from the CPA side, when it comes to tax strategy, is a lot of people don't want to give away too much information for fear the client will take that information and go somewhere else, right? What I have found is I want to give potential clients as much information as possible so they
Mhm.
understand the complexities of what they're trying to do and so that they can come to the realization alone that they cannot do it without us, right?
Okay.
Because that's the reality. And so we are going through the process of building out an online course that we are going to charge for. That online course really is meant to push more information out at a very low cost for people to understand that there are all these additional tax strategies that you can do. And then it's really meant to be a lead generator for us, right? For people to understand, I can't do this without working with these people. And so I need to jump in and work with them. So we are working on doing stuff like that. It's a work in progress currently, but yeah, we're excited about it.
Education marketing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Nice. All right. So while we're talking about customers, like right now, what's your way to acquire customers and how do you um how has that changed through your past 7 years?
Yeah, great question. So I've always been pretty big on social media. I have a social media brand, Snapback CPA. It's why I wear a snapback hat everywhere I go. It's both a blessing and a curse, I guess you could say. Um, and as I've built that brand up, we've gotten a massive amount of leads from social media. I would say it has shifted a little bit in the last year or two. We've shifted much more to a word of mouth growth strategy by leveraging the clients we already have, by working with their friends and family, trying to pull them in. And there's a big reason we made that shift, and we can get into that if you want to. But what we're really shifting to now is I'm going to a lot of conferences. I've been doing a lot of travel the last year and a half or so, going to a lot of conferences, trying to meet a lot of people in the places that I want to meet them. Because social media is great, but the unfortunate side of social media is it is a lot of clientele that don't necessarily fit our ideal client avatar, right? And so we have a hard time of filtering through those leads. And so we want to get in rooms where more high net worth individuals are, where they're more engaged. When you're dealing with more high net worth individuals, it takes much more of an interpersonal connection before you can really get to the next point of starting to talk business, whether or not you're going to work together. So getting in those rooms where we're face to face with them, where we can hang out with them, get to know them a little bit and then start talking shop is we found that to be very beneficial. So that's really where we're shifting to now. But social media has been a great tool to get us to this point. And so if any CPAs out there trying to figure out how to generate more leads, I think social media is an amazing place to start. And it's free. All it is your time to sit down and take some videos and post those videos and learn how to use the softwares. I don't recommend running paid ads unless you really want to, I guess. I've seen much more success on just posting content than I have with paid ads. So we'll continue to run the social media stuff, but we're also continuing to get out in front of people, actual conferences and stuff like that as well to start building the brand awareness.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's
You
been fun.
probably need a lot of manpower for reaching out conferences. Yeah, that's amazing. Where do you see AI helping with, let's start with leads and then
Yeah.
we go into operations and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So AI, for those that are avoiding AI, you're making a massive mistake. I think it's apparent that AI is going to be embedded in almost everything that we do going forward, both from lead generation and marketing to actual operations and generating tax returns and communicating with clients. CPAs also have a curse where they don't like to embrace new technology much. We get very used to what we're doing and then we want to stay in that arena rather than embracing new technology and trying to grow with it. And so from a lead generation standpoint and perspective, there's so much you can do from with AI to help get more information out there, from generating blog posts for your specific niche to generating actual video content with your specific niche. And it can even be you speaking, but it's AI generated scripts and it's AI generated voice. You can do all sorts of stuff to automate your lead flow as well. As soon as someone schedules a call with you, you can use AI to then take that and add it to your CRMs and add it to your management software. So there's so much you can do with the tools out there to help automate that and make it a very seamless flow. Not only that, but follow-up. So email follow-ups with clients. You can use AI to generate those emails and follow up with those leads and make sure that you always have those touch points with everybody. Your monthly newsletters or weekly newsletters you can run AI with. There's so many applications for it that it's really impossible to sit down and list every single one of them because there's just so many opportunities out there to leverage it to help build your firm and to help make sure that you're staying on top of as much lead generation as possible. So it really is one of those things that is extremely powerful and needs to be embraced.
Have you been using anything with your company?
Yeah, so we use AI pretty much in every single area of our firm. So all those things that I basically went through, we are using AI actively. We use AI to help with our weekly newsletter. We're using AI to help us build our lists, our email lists for that. We use AI within our social media. We use AI for taking our calls. Whenever someone schedules calls, we use AI to then automatically add it to our CRM, which then automatically adds it to our tax management software. We use it for a ton of stuff. Internally, we're using it for tax strategy stuff. There's a new AI called Tax GPT that allows us to upload a tax return to it. It tells us the missed strategies. It tells us the missed opportunities. It tells us where we're probably seeing errors and we need to go and fix them. It gives us audit red flags. It gives us tons of information that someone who's not well versed on the strategy side can use and then learn about those things that they may have missed, go back through the preparation process and get the return to a much better point and ask the client much better questions than they probably originally would have. So there's a ton that you can do. And the cool thing is there's more coming out every single week. And that's the kind of the crazy part of AI is the advancements in that technology is starting to rapidly increase month over month. And so I think we're within 2 years of having some sort of software that can prep pretty much any return from front to back um, without really any human touch on it at all, other than obviously the review aspects and stuff like that. So I think we are pretty close from that perspective, and I'm excited about it. A lot of CPAs are scared about that, but I'm very excited about it.
Do you work with any particular firms to get all these integrated?
No, so we've actually done it ourselves. We've kind of piecemealed it together as we've been growing. And we have hired like consultants and stuff in the past to help us build it out originally. And then going to conferences, I went to the AICPA conference. That's where we got connected with Tax GPT. We also got connected with a few other AI firms. We also use BotKeeper. That's another one that we use for our bookkeeping aspects of the firm, where originally we would have one bookkeeper being able to manage maybe 30 sets of books to now we have one that can manage 100. So that's increased our capacity substantially on the bookkeeping side. So there's a lot that you can do with it, but we've kind of just piecemealed it together as we've gone. And that's another benefit of being in my position. I can sit back and look at all these tools and all these resources and see if it's going to be something beneficial and then play around with it before we integrate it and then work with Jonathan and Nicole to actually integrate it into the firm. So, but if you're stuck in the weeds, I could see that being a hard thing to do. So maybe in that situation, you probably want to get a consultant or something like that to help you with it.
No, that makes full sense. I mean, It's always everyone in the world is just if there was like a magic newsletter that comes in and like these are the tools that use today and these are ways
Yeah.
to implement it. That would be the best thing. But what do you think are the tough problems that, will be solved with AI in the CPA industry in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, the biggest ones I think are going to be the manual data entry aspects,
Mhm.
right? Like I said, we use BotKeeper. The tricky part with AI is it's not there yet to do 100% of what you want it to do. Intuit just came out with a, what do they call it? I think they call it accountant agent within QuickBooks Online that's supposed to kind of be an AI agent that does the bookkeeping for you. It's not good. It does not do a good job at all. Whereas BotKeeper does a much better job, but I believe that there's a much more heavy human input, human touch points with BotKeeper. I don't believe it's fully AI integrated yet. And so I believe that the biggest items to go first within the accounting world are those types of things. Bookkeeping, tax preparation. I also believe the spread of information is pretty much already taken over by AI, in my opinion, at this point. So, like people learning about all these tax strategies and stuff like that on social media, I'm willing to bet a lot of that's AI generated stuff, which is good, in my opinion, because it spreads the word on different things. It makes CPAs think outside the box. But I would say those are the three main things: information, bookkeeping, and then the tax preparation aspects.
And what about the human, the kind of decisions that the humans make right now, which are really, really high risk and sensitive? Do
Yeah.
you think that, there can be an assistant in terms of helping with that, or can that be taken over completely?
I don't think that can ever be taken over completely. I think at the end of the day, there's always going to need to be that high level look at every single situation. Because not only are we looking at this year, but we also have to understand the client's goals for the next 5 years and 10 years. That's where it can get very tricky. So I don't think that'll be taken over completely. I mean, I'm sure there's something's going to change in the next 2 to 5 years that I can't even comprehend that may make it to where that even can be replaced. And so I don't think at this point that can be replaced. I think there will always be a need for that, which is again why it's such an important push for CPAs to make this embrace of this AI and incorporate it into their firms so that they can start to step back and build those personal relationships with clients because that's really going to be the main thing that allows you to hold on to your clients long term is going to be that personal relationships and understanding their goals and understanding where they want to be in the next 5, 10, 15 plus years. And so time will tell if that can actually be replaced, but as of now I don't think it can.
So can there be a day when there is like a one person CPA firm with the manual overhead done by that one person? Rest of the one person is just there to make
Yeah.
sure everything's good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there can be, and there already is, right? So I would say first off, it would depend on size. How big do you want to build it? I personally don't like doing anything alone just because I think there's so much benefit to bouncing ideas off of Jonathan and Nicole and other people in the firm to make sure that we're looking at all the aspects that we should be looking at. I do think you will see firm sizes shrink. Absolutely. Especially as data entry goes to machines and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
will see the firm size shrink, and you will also see those who struggle with interpersonal connections and communication. You will
Yeah.
see them having a harder times keeping their jobs and staying in the profession, just because I think that is going to be the main aspect that takes over. We're going to have to be able to talk to people. We're going to have to be able to understand their desires and goals. And it takes a person who's really good at communication to be able to do that. So I don't know. I don't think there'll ever be a time where you're a one man shop
Mm.
because as we get further and further into this, I think communication is going to be more and more important. Yes, you can communicate as much as possible over email, but there's always going to need to be that face to face like this, jumping on a Zoom call, whether I'm in Boise and the client's in Florida, right? This touch is extremely important. And I think there will always be a need for that. And so having the right people on the team, because I can only do this with probably up to 15 to 30 clients, right? In order to do it well and have a good understanding of those goals and that relationship with that client, and then getting other people on staff that can also do that with another 30 clients, right? Or whatever that looks like. So I do think There will always be a need to have multiple people in the firm. But yes, you can have one man shops, just depends on how big you want to run it.
Makes sense. So where do you see yourself like in terms of see the company in the next 2 years in terms
Yeah.
of expanding and
Yeah.
what different hiring areas will you be expanding into?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So we have very aggressive growth plans. We actually want to 5x the company within the next 2 years. So we will have to expand our revenue streams. One way we're expanding that is through the online courses. Another way that we're looking to expand that is by adding other services. So bringing in legal services, bringing in financial services to the business. We're looking at expanding in that avenue because we already do a lot of that stuff with our strategy clients. It's also niching down even further within the ideal client avatar that we've identified, and really trying to get to where they are and have that face-to-face communication and relationship building. So a lot more conferences are coming down the pipeline for me. Yeah, looking forward to that. But that's kind of where we're looking, and we already kind of have a growth plan in place for what the team's going to look like as we hit those numbers. Obviously, that will change dramatically as technology grows and changes and things like that happen. So I do think the team will look much differently than it does now in 2 years as we hit those growth numbers. But as far as capacity goes, I do believe we'll be at a much better capacity point than we even are now when we're to that point. And yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
That's nice. So one question that comes to me right now is when an entrepreneur has decided or set a goal or set a growth plan, how strict should they hold on to it?
Yeah.
The tools are changing every day.
That's a good question. So I think it's very important to set goals that are first off obtainable, right? You want to be able to reach those goals, but you need to be flexible with how you get there, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to set the final stage, like this is where I want to be in this amount of time. But then you got to be flexible with how you're going to get there, right? A lot of it is because as a business owner, like the hardest thing to do as a business owner is to get past the first 100,000 in revenue. Then once you
Mhm.
get past the first 100,000, the hardest thing to do is get past 500,000. And once you get past five, the hardest is a million, and then it's 2 million, and then it's 5 million, then it's 10 million, and you have these hurdles that you basically have to break down everything that you know and relearn it, you know? And
Yeah.
so, like, we can understand what the end goal is, but we also need to understand that the path to get there is going to be dramatically different than we can even fathom at this point, right? So you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to incorporate other technologies. You have to be willing to adjust even your ideal client avatar in order to get to those goals. So you have to be willing to change anything and everything in order to get to that goal if you truly want to get to that goal. So I say you got to be as flexible as possible.
That's a very great answer. One thing, as like personally, also, which I feel is I wake up every day and I'm scrolling through my social media. I'm seeing these new tools coming in,
Yeah.
and there's this fear that builds into me, like, oh my God, I have to do my work and also learn and also be on top of everything.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone in the world, not just any particular industry or any particular position, everyone is feeling it. Do you have any tips on like how should you keep your emotions or how should you
Yeah.
your mind to, go for the
Yeah.
run?
Yeah. I would say bite-sized pieces, especially somebody that's new getting into like the AI world, for example. Instead of jumping in and trying to master Grok and Gemini and ChatGPT and all these different tools, pick one and get really, really, really good at it, right?
Mhm.
Learn all the different tools that you can use within one. And then if it's like, well, this does all this stuff really well, but I want to try to do something else, maybe incorporate something else into it that can maybe do a little bit and then add little bit by little bit, right? Same thing goes with the technology that's coming at us every single day. Every day there's a new freaking AI company that's doing something else that's super shiny, super sexy, and everyone wants to jump on board and figure out if it's the newest and greatest thing. Just like we saw with the dot-com bubble, right? There was a ton of companies that flushed in, and there was a ton of companies that were doing all sorts of cool stuff. And then it took a couple years for the dust to settle, and now you have two or three massive companies that really stuck with it and did a really good job. I think we'll see the same basic thing within AI. I think we'll have a few companies that get rooted and do really, really well, but I do think it'll take a bit for the dust to settle so that we can understand what companies do that really, really well. So, um, I just think it's being patient, not chasing the shiny object, which I think is difficult as an entrepreneur, and just really trying your best to stay focused on that long-term goal. And
Mhm.
then, is this new tool something that I can utilize to truly help me get to this long-term goal, or is what we're doing good enough? Right. And has this new tool been around long enough and tried and tested enough that it can actually perform to the level that it's saying it can perform? That's kind of my advice there is take off bite-sized pieces, right? Jump into it slowly, but still spend a few hours a day on it because it's the most important thing that's going to revolutionize business in our modern day. So you have to be able to understand it and digest it and learn how to use it. And then as you get more in depth in those tools, you'll kind of start to be able to see if a new tool comes out or a new technology comes out or a new company comes out, is it legitimate or is it just another little just another
Yeah.
little blip that's going to be here and be gone in 2 months, you know? So you can kind of start to identify them a little bit faster as well. So yeah, it's tricky though. That's probably one of the hardest problems, especially now,
Right.
is what's going to stick, what's going to do really well, and what's going to go away quick.
That actually suits me.
Yeah.
So if I think you're almost on time, so if there was one thing that, if you had like a magic wand today, what would that be that you would try to solve like in your company with AI?
Yeah. Man, that's a great question. I mean, when it comes to AI, I would love to, if I could wave a magic wand and have it be perfect, I would love to build out like a true AI agent within our firm, right? That understands our firm inside and out, understands our entire clientele, understands all their strategies, understands all their corporate structures, to where when we get an email, anybody can sit down and be like, well, I just got an email from this client, give me a breakdown of their situation, and then boom, you have the breakdown of their situation and that general thing, right? So I would say that would probably be my magic wand, which is I know it's just getting access to our internal company and our internal clientele. But I do think that would be a very valuable thing to have. I think that would be amazing. And I think it would solve a lot of problems with pushing that information down the chain rather than just all this client information sitting with me and Jonathan and Nicole, right? So I would probably say that would be the one thing I would love to just implement now if it was possible. And again, I think we're getting there quick. I think there'll be some tools there soon that will allow us to do that at a reasonable price. I do think there are tools out there that can do it, but I mean, it's millions of dollars of build out in order to get to that point. But so that would be my magic wand. But
Perfect, perfect. That sounds amazing. And
yeah,
one last thing, like what is some advice that you would like to give to young entrepreneurs who are in any space, and especially in the CPA side,
yeah,
still timid about going out there and becoming entrepreneurs and
yeah,
just thinking in the early stage? What
yeah.
would what would be your one advice for them?
A word of advice for them would be, that's a good question. The biggest thing that I've learned about entrepreneurship is it's not for everybody. And it's okay if that's not for you, right? Some people do really well in a corporate structure and working for a company and building something out with another company. That's
Mhm.
okay, right? There's a lot of good that comes from that. And you can make a lot of money doing that, you
Yeah.
know? Entrepreneurship and getting out and starting your own business and doing your own thing is very lonely. People are going to call you crazy. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose relationships. You're going to be on an island by yourself for a very long time until you make it. And then all of a sudden, all these people start coming back into your life. So there's a lot, it's a long-term struggle, and it's not easy. A lot of times, especially nowadays with social media and stuff like that, people are like, "Oh, the only way to make $1 million is to start my own business and to go do all these things," and it makes it look easy, and it's not easy at all. It's very, very difficult. I do think the world needs entrepreneurs. I think it needs small business owners, but we also need people who are really good at holding and maintaining a job and doing really well in that job in that position. So I would say my biggest piece of advice for someone on the fence is or looking at getting into entrepreneurship is really try to ask yourself if it's for you. Start something on the side before you jump out and just start your own business. I always knew it was for me, so I just jumped out with both feet and started my own business, which I would probably go back and do it differently there. But yeah, that's what I would say my biggest piece of advice is. And I don't even know if that's a piece of advice or just kind of
No,
information.
that's actually a good piece of advice that at least makes people understand that they're not wrong in not
Yeah.
thinking.